Florida State has been cheated by the ACC for a while, and the numbers that I just went through are going to prove it as we break into the recruiting season for the Florida State Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If you thought you hated the ACC, well, after today's episode, you'll probably hate them more. Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet is a winner. Today's show is going to discuss recruiting, with the May 30th weekend being a massive, important, vital, whatever word you want to use to describe it, weekend for the Noles. It's not the numbers that are coming in. It's a smaller group, but there are some key guys. I'll explain why. And we're also going to talk a lot about O-line recruiting. That is the great news today. Florida State has done a tremendous job of getting offensive linemen set up. And we're also going to talk about the ability for Florida State to get some momentum. They've got 9 commitments. We're going to talk a little bit about that later in the show. But to begin, before I started diving into all these visits that the Noles have set up, I wanted to discuss how they have been impacted by the payout from the ACC. I went through some numbers, give their comparisons that I've seen on different sites, the AP and different places around the internet, on what was last year's fiscal numbers. Florida State improved. I'll give the ACC that, but Florida State and Clemson have still come up short on what they should have received. And I'll explain why that is going to negatively impact Florida State in recruiting this year, the year after, and so on and so forth. And in essence, Florida State has fallen further behind. So let's start right there. Just raw numbers, and then I'm going to keep coming back to them over and over and over and over again, just to reiterate how important this is. So before we go do any further, Florida State and most of the ACC members got about $45 million this last year. It's not terrible by any means. Not saying that it is, but Jim Phillips, the ACC, they cheated themselves as much as Florida State, Clemson, and everybody else because they didn't do a good enough job with the grant of rights deal. I know Florida State and everybody signed it, but they should have done a better thing here and said, why would we sign something for this long? How that many different people failed, I still don't know, and that might be one of the greatest mysteries in recent college athletics. Why would you sign a deal that's over a decade long with things changing so fast in society? Mind blowing. And again, Florida State signed it. They are 100% culpable. Not ACC forcing you to do it. Florida State's brass made that decision too. But all parties failed, and they still did, even forget the number of years. They just didn't get enough money. They didn't. They just didn't get enough. So comparatively, the Big Ten got $63.2 million per school, and the SEC $52.5. Now, you're pretty close to the SEC, according to the numbers that I read. It's not terrible. But at the end of the day, $7.5 million, some of that cash is going to go to recruiting. Some of that cash is going to go to your coaches, your staff. I'm telling you, it is so vital, the people in the back office, from the secretaries to the people that work on the NIL, the associate athletic directors, the recruiting staff. You can have more of them. You can give them better benefits. You keep people there. You have more continuity. Florida State got hosed. So, and again, I know this is a Florida State pod, but so did the other members of the Atlantic Coast Conference. Whether you signed that deal or not, they should have gotten a better job or better deal out of it, because the job that was done by the Atlantic Coast Conference, it failed everybody, including themselves, ironically, because they made less money too than they should have. Now, let's go over some things here that I just kind of mentioned. Recruiting is my crux. It's what I love. It's what I followed. It's what I do on this show quite often. And again, we're going to do this a lot between now and about the 5th or 6th, maybe 7th or 8th, because some of the kids will wait till just after July 4th. I think July 4th is a Wednesday this year. A lot of kids commit on that day or a few days after. So before July 10th, let's just be conservative. Recruiting will pretty much be at its tipping point. Most of the key players will have made a decision. So every day we're probably going to have some kind of recruiting news here on Locked On Seminoles. But recruiting, I'm guessing you're losing $400,000 or $500,000 a year conservatively on flights for coaches, the transportation that you spend on players coming in, and like the hotels. Like Tennessee spent roughly $5 million last year, an SEC school, on recruiting. That's a report that I was given by Chris Corney here on the Locked On Podcast Network, as I did a crossover edition with him on SEC recruiting for the Portal podcast that I do that covers recruiting. And I'm like, wow, Florida State, I mean, there's no way around it. They don't have the same amount of money to pull from. And while it's a little harder to recruit at Tennessee than Florida State, because state of Tennessee, no offense, doesn't have as many recruits. They recruit more out of state. I get it. But to have an extra $7.5 million laying around, yeah, that matters. That matters a lot. How expensive the hotels are, the cars, all the different things that you use. This stuff is important. The ability to do that with each and every guy that comes onto your campus, with his family, with his friends, it's just unbelievable the difference that it makes. And Tennessee's used it to help rise up in the rankings for recruiting, and the more important rankings, making the college football playoff. They got smoked by Ohio State last year, but at least they made it. That's the objective. At least get to the playoff every year for most teams. It's kind of the objective. Florida State should be in that group, but right now, in my opinion, they're being held back in a lot of ways just by the ACC deal as much as anything else. You could argue against that if you wanted, but money matters, man. And recruits know it. The NIL is not going to be necessarily the same. There's all kinds of ways you can look at it. The other thing is very ironic, because by all the renderings and all the different things that I've seen in terms of photographs put out by Florida State, the facility that is Doak Campbell Stadium is tremendous. I mean, they did a great job. I don't know what company or companies were involved. Tip of the cap to them. They did a good job. But wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to borrow as much money because you were making more from the ACC? You got to pay that money back. I don't know what the total number ended up being. There were projections and all that, but it never ends up being the same. It's always more because you come up with new stuff you got to do for code. And there was a problem getting this product or this or that. It always goes up. Somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 to $200 million was spent on it. And I know there'll be other luxuries that are taken from it beyond football. They're going to use that stadium and the surrounding building for all kinds of things, but it's still primarily football. If you'd have had an extra $7-8 million a year, let's just say seven, really easy number, over a decade, that's $70 million. That's almost a half that you would need if it was 150 that you spent on Doak. Maybe it's more, but $70 million matters. It's really just mind blowing. And I hadn't looked at these numbers in a while, and I needed the refresher. And I hope this just helps people understand how impactful these deals are. The one good thing from this is I guarantee you, no matter where Florida State ends up after leaving the ACC, and I still think that'll be just a couple more years, we'll see Florida State make better decisions. I mean, you're going to learn from this, right? Like, if I'm right and it's 26 or 27, something like that. I know Gene over at War Chant thinks so, et cetera. And I hope Gene's right, by the way. He does a great job over there. I don't see how you can't want to leave and look at this from a 4 to 5, maybe 6, 7 year deal with anything when you're voting with the whatever league. And I'm guessing it's the Big Ten. They're not going to want to make real long-term deals. You got hosed once, that's on me. If it happens again, or that's on you, but if it happens again, it's on me. I don't think Florida State's going to do that. I think they're going to make better, sound decisions, because the landscape of college football changes so fast. To be honest, more than 4 or 5 years for a contract is pretty hard. And I know the ESPNs and all that, they want just to have one deal done. It's easier for them, and it's probably a lot cheaper. But I think that not only schools like Florida State, let's just say it's the Big Ten, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, these schools are probably not going to want long-term deals either. That's something to watch out for moving forward. Florida State and Clemson getting hosed on this, and really the entire ACC with the grant of rights deal. I think you're going to see shorter contracts or if they're longer, they're going to have a just insane amount of flexibility, meaning the buyout to leave the conference, this, that, and the other will be pretty low. And I can tell you right now, the ESPNs of the world don't want any part of that. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to have a couple questions for Florida State fans, and then we'll break into recruiting. That is next here on Locked on Seminoles. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Imagine the different opportunities that you have with the Final Four, the NBA, just among others. You got hockey going on right now. You have baseball going on. You could actually combine things across the different sports. That's up to you. You could do parlay. You could do in-game live betting. There's a lot of different opportunities. But the point that I would like to make most would be trends, especially with the NBA. There's been some pretty wild upsets going into it. The Pacers, the Knicks, different teams have had their runs. Study the trends on who's shooting the ball the best. The NBA has changed a lot with the rules, with the defense, and how you can actually put your hands on somebody or not. I think we're going to see a lot more scoring in the finals this year than in a lot of other years. Just my opinion, but I think that's something to look at. So again, who's heating up and why? That's something to watch. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Florida State still has to figure out its next moves to get out of the ACC, as we've discussed many times here on Locked On Seminoles, and that doesn't change. But what I also want to mention is something else. One of the reasons that the ACC failed is they didn't negotiate well enough with ESPN and other broadcasting partners. That's pretty self-explanatory. But one of the reasons that it's down is something that I think Florida State needs to work on with the other members of the ACC and whichever league they go to. Again, it's going to be Big Ten, in my opinion. Maybe it's the SEC. We'll see how that goes. That's really not the important part. The following is more important. I want to name some schools in the Atlantic Coast Conference right now. And you tell me what your thoughts are down below, comment on the YouTube page, etc. What are your thoughts about these schools in regards specifically just for football? Virginia, Boston College, Virginia Tech, NC State even, Duke, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech. Have they been consistent in all the things they need to do administratively to make the ACC better as a football league? Now, they all have their ups and downs, and I could have mentioned Syracuse, but I want to give them some props. They hired Fran Brown, and they're on the up. They were one of those teams, but that's a difficult market because they're in upstate New York. That's a really unique deal. But even Boston College, they got some tradition, and they just haven't spent the money. At some point, you got to spend money on your facilities, your coaches, NIL, and do some things. I wonder, and I'm thinking out loud here, how much does Florida State, Miami, Clemson, those are the three premier programs in the league, how do they put pressure on some of these other schools? And I'm not going to include Cal or Stanford, right? They're brand new. SMU's doing exactly what they should be doing. They're spending money. They're investing in Rhett Lashley and his staff. That's exactly the blueprint you need. But how much do you think ESPN, CBS, NBC, any of these different networks that might entertain the ACC, how much do you think they're like, look, why would we invest when these schools don't invest in themselves? And they'd be right, especially Wake Forest. Like, they lost a traditional, consistent, bring them up by the bootstraps kind of coach because of NIL to a certain degree. But that's also on the school. Like, they didn't want to pay. They didn't do enough with facilities and paying the coaches at Wake Forest. And I'm just using one. What he did there was good. Don't get me wrong. But Wake Forest lost a longtime coach, and they're probably, I got a feeling they're going to flatline. And it's a shame because there for a while, Wake Forest was pretty darn good. That's a hard place to win because of their academic restrictions. And for the record, unless something's changed, it is the smallest school in the Power Four. It's not a big campus. Social life's probably not the same as you would get at a Florida State or an NC State or something like that. But anyway, then you got like coaches. I mentioned NC State. I'm a little disappointed in them too. Their fans come out. I'm not picking on the fans. I'm talking about administration. I just don't see enough effort to go spend enough on assistants, or maybe, I don't know, Coach Dave Doran's done a good job there, but over the last couple of years, it started to wane. They've got to either get rid of him or shake it up. And that's one of those teams, when they're up, the league is more valuable. They're trending down. No good for the league. Give UNC credit. This is the one I've got in the middle. I've got the hover area. I don't know what to make of it yet because there's obviously a lot of off-the-field issues, I'll just leave it at that, with Bill Belichick and his girlfriend, who I think we can safely say is causing problems. But they at least went out and tried to make a splash. That helps the league 100%. And obviously the UNC brand in basketball, whatever league they go to, Big Ten, I've heard all kinds of different things. I've kind of given up following Florida State and UNC and Clemson, like which league it's going to be. Those are the three. The Miami's kind of the one that's unique. I don't know if they're really trying to leave or not, but we'll see. But UNC, Clemson, or Notre Dame, or Florida State, they're going to be going out of this league. I think that's pretty safe. NC State, it's another one they probably want to go where UNC does to keep that rivalry. But I'm not sure with what they've done lately if they're going to help. And in the short term, I don't think that helps the ACC either. NC State down. We're not sure about North Carolina. Wake Forest is headed in the wrong direction. Virginia Tech, at least, is headed in the right direction. Obviously, it would be great for the ACC if Notre Dame joined, but that's never going to happen. They're going to stay independent. Virginia's not done enough. Syracuse headed in the right direction, but now are they going to funnel more money into the program? Are they, to really get more recruits? Brand Brown's done a great job, but like everybody, there's a question mark. So the league deserves a lot of the problem, the administrative side, but some of the teams and the institutions got to help out with Miami, Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson. They've got to have help because the bottom end of the league drags it down. It's just true. Now, as I transition to recruiting, I want to bring up a player that is from my era. When Florida State was rolling in the mid to late 90s, Eric Thomas played at Florida State from 95 through 99. He was on the title team, played offensive line. He played in the Arena League or one of the other leagues professionally, but he was a pretty darn good Florida State player. He lettered 4 years for Florida State. That's pretty hard to do. His son, Aaron Thomas, is an offensive lineman at Mountain Point. Now, I mentioned earlier in the show that the Noles had some guys coming in on visits pretty early on that were important. I believe Aaron's going to come in June 6th off the top of my head, but his official visit list is elite. Texas, Washington, Florida State. He's a kid from Arizona now. His dad played out there last. That's the last stop that Eric Thomas made in his professional career, playing for a team out there. But this kid's got the Nole blood. He's got the genetics. Big kid, 6'6", 6'7", 300 pounds. He transitioned from D-line to offensive line last year, and this is so common. A kid that kind of outgrows the D-line, he may want to play it, but it's best that he transitions into offensive line because he's so long and just naturally powerful, not necessarily twitchy to be a pass rusher. They move him to offensive tackle. I'm not saying he would be an instant hit, but he's ranked, I think, 24/7 as him like his 3-star. But then I looked at his official visits, and I'll go deeper into this next week with him. I want to bring Aaron Thomas back up. But this is the kind of recruit that Bobby Bowden just loved. Guys that played both sides of the ball, kids that had some traits that were genetically gifted from their father, played at a good program. And this kid plays at Mountain Point. I'm sure many of you don't know this, but in the Phoenix area, Mountain Point is one of the best programs, and they've sent kids Power 4 forever. It is a really, really good high school program. So genetics, Florida State tie, position of need, has the right frame, all those things. Florida State has done a good job of getting in on a ton of linemen. You could argue you could argue that Aaron Thomas is the most important offensive line recruit in this class. Having the Noles legacy thing is a part of it. And I'm going to go over some other guys that may be better now, but his upside, because I went and watched his film, is really good. He doesn't always get hands extended quite as much. He lets guys get into his body a little bit. Again, last year was his first year playing O-line, but he can move laterally. He'll get up to the second level, hit a linebacker and scoot over, try to get to a DB. Really good athlete, and he's 300 pounds. Guys like that are what Florida State have missed forever. That cannot continue. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a few of the visits they got coming up, not this weekend, but next. It's a really important list before they have Aaron Thomas on campus. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. Florida State's first weekend for the consecutive May 30th, June 6th, June 13th, and June 20th weekends is an important one. Not in terms of numbers, but in terms of the players that will be in Tallahassee. I don't think I can say it enough, but like Florida State needs linemen in this class. I know you all know that. But the kids they have coming in, I'm just going to list them off, then I'll go through them individually. Samuel Roseborough, offensive lineman out of Clearwater High School. Love his film. Kid plays really hard. He has the frame to be a guard or a right tackle, maybe play left tackle. He's versatile. And as the saying goes, don't believe me. Go by what the college coaches say. Look at the official visit list. Got Florida State, May 30th. Texas, June 20th. June 13th, Ohio State. June 5th, Texas A&M. That is, as they say, murderer's row. Those schools, especially like you got two Texas schools and Ohio State coming to go after a kid. Now, I liked him originally, and I'm going to take full credit for that. And as his film got out, all of a sudden, all these schools just jumped all over him. But to have not one, but two Texas schools after a kid from Clearwater, just across the bay from Tampa, puts it in perspective. Florida State needs offensive linemen, especially versatile ones. Samuel Roseborough could play guard or tackle. I wouldn't care which. He's a good player. He'll figure it out. I think that's a young man that has a very high ceiling. He still has a long way to go technically, like all the high school linemen do, but you can't teach the frame. He plays hard, and he's really powerful. That is a massive visit for the Florida State Seminoles. Same weekend, another offensive lineman from the same area, Johnny Jones, Berkeley Prep High School, his official visit list, kind of the same deal. Ole Miss, he already took April 18th. Florida State's May 30th. UCLA is on the 6th of June. Penn State, June 13th. And then the Miami Hurricanes, June 20th. He's 6'6", 6'7". I don't think he's quite the athlete that Roseborough is, but the length is ridiculous, and he's at Berkeley Prep. Elite program. Dominic Sayo is the coach there, great guy, known him for a very, very long time. He said Johnny's a great kid off the field, and if Dom says it, I'm good with it. I haven't had a chance to meet Johnny yet, but really like the fact that he's at a program where you're not going to mess around there academically, socially, you're going to be on point, or you're not going to be at Berkeley. That's a very expensive school, and the college coaches know it. So that's another one. And then we get into a couple of really interesting visits. One I'm curious about because Florida State is selling a new defensive staff here to this batch of recruits. The D-line is going to have a different combination, at least I think, in the fall of 3- and 4-man looks. I don't see why they wouldn't. They practiced some of that all the way through when they were Syracuse, when they were at Nebraska, now they're at Florida State through spring ball. We'll see. But if you're going to run any form of a 3-man defensive front, size really becomes a priority. Kendall Gerville, 6'5", 310. He's down there at Fort Myers High, and you can't teach the ability to play nose guard or defensive tackle at that size out of high school. Even if he's just a scout team guy as a freshman, wherever he goes, that team's going to benefit from him being on the roster. And I don't think he's going to be on the scout team very long. Very athletic, large human being. Kendall is going to be visiting, among others, Florida State May 30th. Then he's got Georgia June 6th, Florida June 13th, and Texas June 20th. Again, elite official visit list. Don't take my word for it. Texas wants it. Kirby Smart at Georgia wants it. UF is after it. UF is allegedly the team to kind of watch here, but their recruiting has been very bad. As poor as Florida State was last year compared to UF, they've got 9 commits and UF has 2. It's so bizarre. But they're in on a lot of guys. So you're either going to get this kid or you're probably going to end up playing against him at some time in a bowl game or against UF, etc. So Kendall Gorville is a really good football player. You got a shot at him. You're bringing him in early. Let's see what Florida State can do. There's also the opportunity for Florida State with it. This is so unique, and I love that they do their own evaluations. Camden K Park at a Winsboro High School. It's in true East Texas, not the biggest high school in the world. He's committed to Mississippi State. Slot receiver. He's 5'10", something like that. Quick as all get out. Athletic. But some of those East Texas, it's so hard to explain, like unless you've been there. Football there is just life and death. It's a lot like the South Georgia high schools and the Panhandle schools, some of those small schools. Friday night, it's a big deal. Niceville, something like that. It matters. Recruiting East Texas is a good thing. If FSU is going to dip into the state of Texas, East Texas is a great place to start. I'm curious if he ended up taking that visit, if it goes through. He's committed to Mississippi State. I think he's starting to blow up a little bit. We'll see what other visits he takes. But Camden K Park is the kind of kid that Florida State could certainly use in their football program, especially if they're going to continue with Malzahn's system of being an up-tempo team, having slot receivers that can come in and contribute right away and maybe play outside some too. That's really, really important. One last note on recruiting to wrap up the show. We're going to see some visits for Florida State, not this weekend. I think it's a dead weekend. I don't think anybody's got visits next weekend. That's what we were just talking about. But we're also going to see some guys come off the board before that visit weekend happens. Just because that is the case, whether it's Florida State getting somebody or somebody getting a player over Florida State, keep an eye on the quarterback recruiting nationally in particular, but just in general. Let's see who comes off the board. It was a slow Monday. I was surprised. I thought there were going to be more commitments around the country. There weren't. The next 2-3 days, we could see some of that. And then as a counterpoint, like, how does that impact Florida State? Are they still going to try to get some of those kids on campus? Do they back off a little bit? I'm curious. This is a new staff. There's a lot of new guys. Are they going to back off and just focus on more of the kids that definitely want to come? I don't know the answer to that. We'll have to see what Florida State and the coaching staff comes up with. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Make sure you hit that like button, that notification bell, and subscribe to this podcast. Share it. I'd love to be in front of more Florida State fans. And if you would, because it really helps the algorithm, comment if there's something you want to hear about in terms of a recruit, something that's going on with the ACC, if there's anything else broad, maybe it's a topic for college football in general, I'm happy to discuss here on Locked On Seminoles. Everybody have a good one. We'll see you again tomorrow.